She thought she could have a black man removed from first class with just a few carefully chosen words until he calmly reached into his pocket and flashed his FBI badge. Patricia Langford walked briskly through Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport, her luxury carry-on rolling effortlessly behind her. She had flown this route countless times. Dallas to Washington, D.C., always in first class, always expecting the same polished routine. Priority boarding, champagne poured before takeoff, the soft murmur of executives and politicians exchanging guarded words. This was the world she believed belonged to her. But when she reached her row and noticed a black man already seated next to her, her steps faltered ever so slightly. He wore a sharp dark blue suit, his laptop balanced on his knees, his attention fixed on the glowing screen as though reviewing classified files. Patricia's lips pressed tight. She lowered her expensive tote with a deliberate thud and sat down, unable to mask her unease. First class wasn't supposed to look like this. The man, Daniel Stokes, hardly acknowledged her presence. His fingers moved steadily across the keyboard, his focus absolute. The light from the laptop outlined the steady confidence in his expression. He radiated the calm certainty of someone who belonged exactly where he was. Patricia, however, refused to see it that way. She shifted uncomfortably, inhaling sharply, her purse brushing against his armrest as if to provoke a reaction. He gave none. Her spine straightened, her eyes darting across the cabin in search of silent validation. Then she leaned slightly toward him, her tone dipped in false politeness. "Excuse me," she murmured. "Are you sure this is your seat?" Daniel didn't even look up. "Yes." Nothing more, no justification, no apology. Patricia cleared her throat, her gaze sweeping the aisle until it landed on Emily Jacobs, a flight attendant in her early 30s, assisting other passengers nearby. Patricia gave the smallest motion with her hand, beckoning Emily over. Daniel exhaled quietly, the kind of sigh that was barely audible yet carried weight. Emily approached with a practiced smile. "Is everything all right, ma'am?" Patricia laughed softly, as though embarrassed. "I think there's been a mix-up. I believe this gentleman may be sitting in the wrong seat." Emily glanced at Daniel, who finally stopped typing and looked up. His face revealed nothing, but his eyes carried a depth that unsettled her. Steady, knowing, unshaken. Emily pulled the manifest from her tablet, scrolling quickly. "Actually, Mr. Stokes is exactly where he should be. Your ticket is 2A, his is 2B." Patricia blinked, her grip tightening against the armrest. "That's strange," she forced a laugh. "Are you sure? I mean, I just assumed." Emily's polite smile didn't waver. "I'm sure, ma'am, everything is correct." Patricia's expression cracked for the briefest second before she smoothed it into a tight smile. "Well," she exhaled sharply, "I suppose mistakes happen." She turned toward the window, but inside she was fuming. Daniel had already gone back to typing as though nothing had occurred. Emily hesitated, sensing the friction, then gave Daniel a respectful nod before moving on. Patricia's mind churned. Her fingers tapped against her knee, her jaw tightening as her gaze flicked between the crew and the man beside her. He wasn't explaining himself. He wasn't playing the role she expected. His silence infuriated her. Patricia Langford wasn't a woman who let insults, or what she perceived as them, pass unchallenged. And as she sat rigid in her seat, arms crossed and mind racing, she decided she wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. This wasn't right. Patricia had been flying first class for decades, and never once had she been placed in a situation like this. The man beside her wasn't doing anything wrong, but to her, that didn't matter. He didn't belong. Her chest rose and fell faster, irritation simmering beneath her polished exterior. She couldn't just accept this. She pressed the call button. The soft chime echoed above, and moments later, Emily Jacobs appeared again, her professional warmth intact. "Ma'am, is there something I can help you with?" Patricia leaned slightly closer, her tone carefully restrained. "I'd like to request a seat change." Emily blinked in mild surprise. "Are you uncomfortable? Is there a problem with your seat?" Patricia hesitated for a fraction of a second. She couldn't say what she really wanted to. Instead, she tilted her head toward Daniel and lowered her voice further. I don't feel comfortable sitting here," she said deliberately. Emily's practiced smile wavered for the first time. I'm sorry to hear that, ma'am. If there's a technical issue with the seat, I'd be happy to. No, it's not the seat. Patricia cut her off with an exhale. I'd just prefer to sit elsewhere. Emily's eyes flicked toward Daniel, who had paused mid-keystroke but remained silent, listening. His hands hovered over the keyboard, jaw set, but he offered no words. Let me check if there are any open seats, Emily said, tapping swiftly on her tablet. Patricia pressed her lips together in a rigid line, waiting. Daniel still gave no reaction, no defense, no acknowledgement, nothing. That infuriated her even more. A few rows ahead, a man in a blazer angled his phone as if checking something, but his ears were tuned in. Across the aisle, a woman whispered something to her husband. People were paying attention. Emily finished scrolling and looked up. I'm afraid we're completely full today, ma'am. There aren't any available seats in first class. Patricia's stomach sank. Emily offered a sympathetic smile. If you'd like, I can check in economy. There might be space there. Patricia's face flushed hot. Economy, the word came out like venom. As if I would ever, she stopped herself, her voice catching. That's not going to work. Emily didn't flinch. In that case, I'm afraid you'll need to remain in your assigned seat. Patricia forced a brittle smile. I suppose I have no choice. Emily nodded politely. Please let me know if you need anything else. She walked away, but Patricia hardly noticed. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Daniel turned back to his laptop, resuming his typing as though nothing had happened. That was it. That was his answer, to ignore her completely. Her nails dug into her palms. This wasn't over. She pressed the call button again, sharper this time. Emily hesitated before returning, her tone even but strained. Ma'am, Patricia straightened, her voice crisp. I need to speak to someone in charge. Emily's face remained composed. I'm the lead attendant on this flight. Is there something specific you'd like clarified? Patricia's tone sharpened like a blade. I need to speak with the head crew member. Or the pilot. A ripple of whispers spread through the cabin. Someone even let out a stifled laugh. Emily's professionalism held, though her patience was wearing thin. Ma'am, the pilot is preparing for departure and won't be available, but I'm here to assist you. Patricia's lips pressed into a thin line, her jaw tense. Daniel, still silent, hadn't budged. No fear, no discomfort, no shifting in his seat. It was as though he had been through this routine before. She lowered her voice once more. I don't feel safe. Those 4 words shifted the entire atmosphere. Emily's professional smile disappeared, her posture tightening as the weight of the statement sank in. Daniel's fingers froze above the keyboard. Across the aisle, a man in a blazer with a Bluetooth earpiece muttered under his breath. Here we go again. Emily straightened, her tone measured. I'm sorry, ma'am, but could you clarify what you mean? Patricia laced her fingers neatly in her lap, tilting her head with practiced poise. I just don't feel comfortable, she said, pausing just long enough to let her implication linger unspoken. I don't want to cause trouble, but I think it would be best if this seat went to someone else. Daniel closed his laptop, his eyes lifting to meet hers for the first time. The calm intensity in his gaze unsettled her, if only for a moment, but Patricia wasn't finished. Her voice rose slightly, sharp enough to cut through the low hum of the cabin. I don't feel safe. The words weren't loud, but their deliberate weight carried through the air. A hush fell across first class. Emily's posture stiffened further, her eyes flicking toward Daniel, who sat motionless with his hands folded on his laptop. He wasn't smiling, wasn't frowning, just studying Patricia with quiet focus. Patricia held her ground, unwilling to retreat. Emily drew in a slow breath. Ma'am, she asked carefully, are you saying you feel threatened? Patricia gave a slight shrug, feigning innocence. I'm not saying that. I just don't feel comfortable, that's all. Across the aisle, the businessman scoffed audibly. Unbelievable. 3 rows back, a young woman angled her phone as though texting, but her camera lens was pointed forward. Whispered conversations rippled through the rows, passengers exchanging glances, their focus shifting squarely onto Patricia. She noticed, she felt it, but pride kept her from backing down. This is a simple request, she pressed on, layering her words with false courtesy. I'm just asking to be accommodated. If I'm uncomfortable, surely I have the right to move, don't I? Emily's jaw tightened. Ma'am, I've already checked. There are no open seats in first class. Patricia's lips pinched into a thin line, and in coach, Emily hesitated. 2 seats are available in economy. Patricia straightened, seizing her moment. He can take one of them. A wave of murmurs swept through the cabin. Daniel inhaled slowly, his fingers drumming once against the laptop before falling still again. He didn't argue, didn't move. Emily blinked, replaying Patricia's words in her head to confirm she'd heard correctly. Her voice dropped lower, firmer. Just to be clear, you're asking me to move this passenger to economy because you don't want to sit next to him. Patricia nodded once, sitting taller. Yes. Emily's inhale was sharp through her nose. That will not be happening. Patricia's head snapped up. Excuse me. Emily clasped her hands together, her tone unwavering. Mr. Stokes has a first-class ticket, same as you. He is in the correct seat. I cannot and will not move him. Heat rushed into Patricia's face. Control was slipping, and she knew it. Passengers were no longer hiding their reactions. Some whispered openly, others shook their heads in disapproval. The young woman's phone was still pointed in her direction. Patricia's stomach churned. This is absurd, she hissed. I'm only asking for the same courtesy anyone else would receive if they felt uncomfortable. Emily stood firm. No, ma'am. You're asking me to remove a paying passenger from his rightful seat and send him to economy for no valid reason. That is not accommodation. That is discrimination. The words landed heavy, cutting through the tense silence. A low whistle slipped from someone in the back. Daniel still hadn't moved, hadn't spoken. He just watched her, unshaken. Patricia's pulse thundered in her ears. This wasn't the outcome she had anticipated. Emily squared her shoulders, her voice now edged with authority. Ma'am, we are moments from taxi. If you cannot remain seated and comply with crew instructions, I will have no choice but to ask you to deplane. Patricia's stomach lurched. What? Emily's voice stayed calm but unyielding. You have 2 choices, ma'am. Remain seated quietly or deplane, but Mr. Stokes is not moving. A handful of passengers broke into light applause. Heat flushed Patricia's chest. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. She wasn't the one who got corrected, who got put in her place. She opened her mouth to argue, but before she could, Daniel slipped a hand into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a leather case, flipped it open, and held it steady for all to see. The gold FBI badge shimmered beneath the overhead lights, and the air in the cabin shifted instantly. Patricia froze, her spine rigid. A few passengers gasped. Some chuckled. The young woman who had been recording leaned in closer, her camera zooming directly on the badge. Daniel's voice was low, controlled, unreadable. He said evenly, tilting his head slightly, "Would you like to file an official complaint? I can take your statement right now." Patricia's breath caught. She couldn't force words out. Daniel didn't blink, didn't move. He just watched her, badge in hand, his calm stare locking her in place. For the first time, Patricia wasn't just embarrassed, she was cornered. The silence pressed heavy on the cabin. The FBI emblem gleamed under the light, undeniable, impossible to ignore. Eyes bore into her, some passengers wide-eyed, others smirking knowingly. Patricia's mouth went dry, her thoughts scrambling for a way out, an excuse that might save her. This wasn't the script she had imagined. The man she had tried to brand as suspicious, the man she wanted removed, was law enforcement. Her throat closed. Daniel's expression never shifted. He wasn't smiling, wasn't gloating, just patient, steady, waiting. His words carried like steel wrapped in silk. You said you felt uncomfortable. That's a serious statement on a federal flight. If you believe I've done anything inappropriate, I'll gladly take your full account. Patricia's insides twisted. The narrative had slipped through her fingers. Where she had expected sympathy and support, now she felt every eye pressing judgment on her. A man too rose ahead, muttered with amusement, "This is gold." The young woman's phone was trained directly on Patricia's face. Emily stood nearby, arms folded, her tone neutral, but her eyes betrayed something more. A quiet understanding. An unspoken challenge. She too was waiting. Everyone was. Patricia's hands shook in her lap, her pulse thundering in her ears. If she admitted she had fabricated it, she would expose herself as a liar. If she doubled down, she would be leveling an accusation against a federal agent on a plane, something that would bring very real consequences. She felt her own walls closing in. Daniel never looked away. After what felt like forever, Patricia's resolve cracked. Her head shifted side to side, the smallest of shakes. No, she whispered, her voice hoarse, no complaint. Daniel gave a single nod, as though he had expected it all along. With precise calm, he closed the badge, slid it back into his jacket, and reopened his laptop, his attention returning to his work as if nothing had happened. For him, it was finished. For Patricia, it was the start of a nightmare. Murmurs of approval spread through the cabin. A few clapped softly. The businessman across the aisle smirked and returned to his paper. The young woman with the phone was already typing furiously. Patricia's pulse pounded against her temples. She wanted to vanish, to erase the last 10 minutes, to pretend none of it had ever happened. But it had, and she had humiliated herself in front of everyone. She had been exposed, and worse, it wasn't just in that cabin. People had seen it, recorded it. Her eyes darted desperately from row to row, searching for someone, anyone, who might meet her gaze with sympathy. But there were no allies here. Even Emily, who had shown her patience at first, no longer carried warmth in her eyes. Patricia swallowed, throat tight, wanting to speak, to claw back control with a sharp word or dismissive laugh. But deep down, she knew the truth. There was nothing left to say. The plane hadn't even left the runway, and she had already lost. But Patricia wasn't just embarrassed now. She was staring at real consequences. She sat stiff and rigid, face flushed, her breath shallow and uneven. This wasn't embarrassment anymore. It was humiliation, carved into her like a scar. Daniel had already dismissed her entirely, his laptop open again, fingers moving with calm, deliberate rhythm. To him, she didn't exist, but the cabin remembered. Across the aisle, the businessman with the Bluetooth smirked, as though savoring the spectacle. The young woman with the phone wasn't typing anymore, but her device still hovered, angled discreetly upward, waiting. Even the attendants carried a different presence now. Professional, yes, but detached, no longer offering her the buffer of courtesy she had once expected. Emily stood nearby, her eyes steady. Patricia could feel every ounce of judgment pressing down on her, the weight of her mistake crushing her chest. She had overplayed her hand, miscalculated entirely. She hadn't just embarrassed herself, she had tried to remove an FBI agent on camera. The implications sank like lead. Emily stepped closer at last, her voice still polite but sharpened. "Ma'am," she said quietly, "I need to confirm you're prepared to remain on this flight without further disruption." Patricia stiffened, her head snapping slightly. A few passengers leaned in, pretending not to listen, but clearly hanging on every word. Anger rose hot in her throat. Why was she being treated as the problem? All she had done was express discomfort, but Daniel's badge had turned the tables completely. She had no leverage left. No power, her jaw clenched. Forcing her lips into what she hoped passed as calm, she whispered, "I'm fine." Emily's eyes lingered a moment too long, measuring her. Then she nodded slowly. "I'll hold you to that," she said before walking away. Patricia's hands twisted together in her lap as her shaky exhale escaped. It was over, she told herself. She would be quiet. She would let it go. But then, the sharp chime of a notification pierced the air. She looked up just in time to see the young woman with the phone smirking, her thumb tapping twice on the screen. Patricia's stomach sank violently. She knew that expression. She had seen it on her own grandchildren's faces when they gleefully shared a video, something designed to spread like wildfire. Her pulse spiked. Her fingers clamped down on the armrest before her body betrayed her and turned. Just one glance at the screen was enough to steal her breath away. The video was already uploaded. The caption, brutal in its simplicity. "Racist woman tries to remove black man from first class, then finds out he's FBI." Patricia's blood ran cold. The flight hadn't even left the ground, and she had already lost completely. If it was online now, there was no undoing it. The avalanche had begun. She turned back toward the window, trying to force her breath to steady, trying to convince herself maybe it wouldn't matter, maybe it would get buried, maybe no one would care. Maybe then her purse buzzed. Once, twice, 3 times. Patricia's chest squeezed tight. She didn't want to look. She didn't want confirmation of what she already knew. but her hands moved anyway, trembling as they fumbled through her bag until her fingers found the phone. She pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and her stomach dropped like stone. Text messages flooded her screen, acquaintances, distant relatives, even people she hadn't spoken to in years. Each one carried the same sting. "Patricia, is this you? I just saw the video. Please tell me it's not real. Oh my God, what did you do?" Her heartbeat thundered in her ears as she fumbled with her phone, swiping to her browser with trembling fingers. She opened Twitter, and the confirmation hit her like a punch to the chest. Her name was already trending. The video had been live for less than 5 minutes, yet it had racked up over 20,000 views. The comments were brutal, relentless. "Karma works fast. This woman really thought she could get away with it. Hope she enjoys the roasting." Patricia's vision blurred. Her life wasn't just unraveling, it was going up in flames. For the first time, she realized there was no undoing this, no polite smile or carefully chosen words that could erase what the world had now seen. And what came after landing would be worse than anything she imagined. Her grip on the phone was so tight her knuckles turned white. The sound of the cabin faded into nothing but the pounding of her own pulse. She refreshed the screen, each update a fresh dagger. 30,000 views, 42,000, 61,000. The number climbed like wildfire. It wasn't slowing, it wouldn't. She scrolled, her stomach lurching at each new comment. Imagine being this entitled. She really thought she'd win. That FBI twist just made my week. Instant karma. Expose her name. Everyone needs to know who she is. Patricia's chest constricted. Her eyes darted across the cabin, desperate for a way to undo time itself. But no one looked at her anymore. They didn't have to. They had seen enough. She sat rigid, her body locked with dread. Daniel remained beside her, silent, steady, fingers gliding across his keyboard as if nothing had happened. If he knew about the video, he gave no sign. He didn't need to. His indifference strung more than anything else. Her phone buzzed violently against her palm. She flinched, then glanced down. Her sister's name lit up the screen, her breath caught. After a long moment of hesitation, she pressed decline, her finger trembling. She wasn't ready for that call. She wasn't ready for any of this. The plane hadn't even been airborne an hour, and her life was already collapsing around her. Patricia dragged in a shaky breath, trying to steady herself, trying to think. She needed a plan. An apology, maybe, but that would only feed the frenzy. Ignore it, pretend it wasn't real. Worse. Her thoughts spiraled, clashing with one another in a frantic loop, and then the pilot's calm voice crackled over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are beginning our descent into Washington, D.C. The local time is 5:43 p.m. Please ensure your seatbelts are fastened as we prepare for landing." Patricia's heart plummeted. Landing. In the chaos of the last hour, she had forgotten about what waited beyond this cabin. She refreshed the video one final time. 97,000 views. Her name was trending in bold letters. Her hands shook as she shoved her phone back into her bag, forcing herself to believe, lie to herself, that maybe she could still get ahead of this. Maybe, just maybe, it wouldn't be as catastrophic as she feared. But Patricia still hopes the storm will fade until she turns on the news. She practically bolted off the plane the moment the doors opened, ignoring the stares, the smirks, the whispered judgment that followed her down the jet bridge. She just needed to get out to escape. But when she rushed into Reagan National Airport, her heart seized at the sight near baggage claim. Reporters, not a mob, not yet, but enough. A woman in a navy blazer read from her phone into a microphone as a cameraman filmed. The viral video shows an unidentified woman attempting to have an FBI agent removed from first class, citing discomfort. The clip has already gained over 1 million views in just hours. Patricia froze. 1 million, her lungs locked. She snapped her head away, praying they hadn't noticed her, but then a reporter's eyes lit up as recognition struck. "Wait, that's her." Panic ripped through her chest. She spun on her heel, heels clattering as she hurried for the exit. Her phone buzzed non-stop inside her purse. Calls, texts, alerts, but she couldn't stop. She shoved past travelers, chest tight, palms damp, until she reached the curb. Then it came. "Miss Langford, do you have a response to the video?" her name. She hadn't realized it was public already. A taxi slowed at the curb and she nearly dove inside. She barked at the driver. Now, he lifted a brow but hit the gas. Patricia pressed her palms to her temples, eyes shut tight. A million views. Her stomach twisted violently. She had built her entire life on managing appearances, curating her reputation, maintaining her place in high society. And in one afternoon, it had been obliterated. Her phone buzzed again. This time, an unfamiliar number. Her hand trembled, but just before voicemail kicked in, she swiped. Hello, silence, then a clipped voice. Miss Langford, this is James Rowlands, chair of the Marston Foundation. I assume you're aware of the situation. Patricia's throat constricted. She had sat on that board for years, a charity that boasted inclusivity, progress, ethical leadership, and she already knew. She swallowed. James, we'll need your resignation, he cut her off flatly. Her breath stalled. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a command. Her ears roared. But this is being taken out of context. The board disagrees, his voice sharpened. Final, we'll release a statement in the morning, your resignation by then. A sharp beep ended the call. Patricia lowered the phone with numb hands. It was gone, her career, her reputation, everything. And the cruelest part, no one cared about her side of the story. The video was the truth now. It was all anyone needed. She drew a ragged breath, the reality crashing over her. This wasn't out of her control. This was her actions. And now she had to live with them. Meanwhile, Daniel Stokes hadn't spared her a thought. By then, he was probably seated in a secure meeting in Washington. Calm, focused, his life completely untouched. For him, it was just another Tuesday. If this story made you think, don't forget to subscribe for more gripping real-life scenarios.